The island has benefited from bouts of rainfall over the past few days, but we are still very much experiencing a drought, and the summer heat continues to beat down on us. Don't be fooled though, none of that means we couldn't be impacted by one of nature's most deadly phenomenon, a hurricane, at any time. So that's what we're tackling in today's show, specifically being prepared should a hurricane reach our shores. There is more on the other side of this break. I'm Adrian Atkinson, and I'll be guiding you through the paces. Please stick around.
As individuals, we have to act in smart ways, follow advice and information provided by the government. I urge you, ignore the fake news, stop circulating the nonsense that is being put sometimes out there. Use your own sense of proper context. In other words, sometimes, on my phone I see all kinds of things come. And what I recognize is that it distracts me. It shifts my attention because you have to be looking at all kinds of things, whereas you really need to be focused. And you can imagine if that is the case all around. So at this stage, you can rest assured that this government is going to communicate with you. We are going to use all channels to provide you with correct, legitimate, accurate information and timely information, no matter what hour of the night.
I already told you the agenda for today, hurricane preparedness. It's time now to get the facts on what ODPEM is doing, how COVID-19 is being factored in the national plan, and what you can expect if a hurricane forces you to go to a shelter.
Welcome to Get the Facts, the program that provides you with information on government's policies and initiatives. I'm your host, Enthros Campbell. During this period, many of us will remember names such as Ivan, Charlie, Flora, and Gilbert, simply because we are in the Atlantic hurricane season, which runs from June 1 to November 30. And these were some of the names of hurricanes. So this year, what should we expect? What should we be doing now? How prepared are we as a country? Today we call on an expert voice, Acting Director General at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, Richard Thompson, to answer these questions and much more. Mr. Thompson, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, we're so very happy that you could make it. But tell us, what can we expect from this year's hurricane season?
Well, this year hurricane season has been forecast to be above normal in terms of the number of events that we will have. Normal is normally about 10 named hurricanes for the season. This year the forecasting is looking for 13 to 19 hurricanes for the season. Well, 13 to 19 named storms, and 6 to 10 to be hurricanes, and 3 to 6 to be major hurricanes. And when we talk about major hurricanes, we're talking about category 3 and over, starting at about 111 miles per hour at category 3 and up to 156 miles per hour and over in terms of a category 5 events. And we have been having more of your large category hurricanes. Yes. We see where Bahamas was impacted by a category 5 event that spent hours over Bahamas. Dorian was there for very slow moving system, and it spent a very long time over Bahamas, dumping Bahamas with torrential rain that caused a lot of flooding. So for small island developing state like ours, like Jamaica, it becomes very important to ensure that there is preparedness measures and mitigation measures being employed, not only leading into the season,
yes,
but way in advance, given our exposure to hurricanes and given our vulnerability.
Right.
So this year it takes on added significance because we are not only looking at preparedness for the hurricane season, we are also responding to a global pandemic.
Right,
We have an
right.
outbreak of COVID in Jamaica.
Right.
So this year's process takes on added significance
Yes.
where we have to expand our preparedness measure to include protocols that are already in place and protocols that we're developing in light of COVID.
All right. Tell us about some of those measures that
So,
you're
so
taking.
the bulk of the protocol and the measures that we're looking at is really around your shelter management process. And at the start of the hurricane season, or way before the start of the hurricane season, we start looking at your shelter inspections and looking at how best we are doing our shelter preparedness measures. And the shelter inspection is really, it includes the ODPEM, who is the main part of the process, but integral to the process is the local authorities.
Yes.
No named municipal corporation, a lot of us probably our age would know them as parish councils.
Yes.
And they play a critical role in the inspection process. The parish disaster coordinators are critical, but this year we would have added in that mix the Jamaica Fire Brigade and the Ministry of Health, because we are now looking at the whole aspect of the protocols around COVID and how shelters will operate in light of COVID. Shelters are normally very crowded spaces. So with the advent of COVID and looking at infectious disease control measures, then you now have to start looking at additional spaces. Schools are normally used as shelters. Church halls. Many times you will get schools being used as a shelter, but you use a small percentage of the school space for shelters. It's looking now at additional space so you can do your 6 feet physical distancing protocol, and also looking at areas within those shelters that can be used for isolation.
Yes.
Just in case someone comes into the shelter, and while in the shelter they probably start showing signs of COVID-19, then they have to be isolated. They have to go through the tests and rigors that the Ministry of Health will do in terms of their protocol, and to ensure that we are preventing any kind of spread in the shelter, because you don't want to be responding to a hurricane, and because of our response to the hurricane, you're expanding the outbreak in country, because we would be still going through a COVID response.
But you're gonna need more personnel, right? Because you're gonna have to monitor the people in the shelter, because you know how people are.
Yes.
So you're 6 feet, but I mean, how are you gonna get people to really stay within the 6 feet? And when you get them to eat and so on, how are you going to?
Well, you're perfectly correct. So it would be looking at how the shelter management is done within the shelters, and the additional staffing that the shelters would require to effectively function. So all these are looked at in terms of the protocol that is way advanced in its development stage in terms of the shelter protocol amidst COVID. Would have already had shelter protocols, but we have to now tweak it a bit to look at the COVID side of the overall.
But that's some of the protocol. We know we can't take animals.
But yes, we don't allow animals. We normally say to persons that you come already with some perishable items. Those who can do that, we do admit that there are persons who on a regular day they can't or even afford those things, because they are below the poverty net, and so the state will ensure that provisions are made for those persons. But as best as possible, we say to persons, ensure that you have those within the shelter.
You provide beds and so on?
So cots, blankets, and those comfort items are provided for shelters. And we also say you ensure that if you have babies, you ensure you come with the formulas, the necessary feed for the babies. You take your medication if you're hypertensive, if you have diabetes or anything like that, and if you're on any kind of other medication, you take those. Persons you take your reading glasses if you wear glasses like myself. And those things that you can function within the space of the shelter. And on the side of the state, we ensure that the shelter managers are in. There is a security protocol in place. Now we are looking at COVID. There's a COVID protocol in place in terms of thermometers for your testing, your hand sanitizers, and all the necessary other supplies.
All right. We're going to have to break there. We'll come back. We've only talked about just the shelters,
Yes.
really, but we have much more to talk about. So we're going to take a break now. We'll pick up with some more information on the Atlantic hurricane season and what we are doing as a country to keep us safe. Stay with us. Welcome back to Get the Facts. We're talking about the Atlantic hurricane season with Richard Thompson, who is the Acting Director General at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM. So let's continue the discussion. I want us to talk now about, as Jamaicans, what should we be doing at this time?
Now is ample time at the beginning of the hurricane season, and even way in advance to start doing your preparation, looking at your roofs to see if there is any leakages, to see if there is any room for doing your retrofitting. We always say that in the development process, when you're doing your construction for your houses, they should be built with hurricane straps. So if you can afford it and you can have your engineers pass through, have a look at your roofs. If they need to be retrofitted with hurricane straps, persons can do that. Look at trees that are close.
What are hurricane straps?
Well, they are really rectangular or square-like metal designed structure that are actually placed on your roof members. So you have the lats that run in your roof. You have the lats that anchor the roof to the frame of the building,
yes.
and the straps hold those together. So
Right,
you find that it anchors better in place,
right.
as opposed to you having you nail on your roof to your frame, but it is not properly anchored.
Right, so straps, and then?
And ensure that your zincs are properly interlocked and overlaid, and look at your trees. You have trees close to your houses. Ensure that those are being pruned. Looking at your non-perishables. We always say to persons, you should always have a stock of non-perishables. Your hurricane shutters. If your storm shutters, if you can afford to put those in, you put those in. But if we are at your hurricane watch, your hurricane warning, persons within the watch, persons should start doing their battening up.
Yes.
Ensure that you have, a lot of persons do that with plyboards. Ensure that your windows are battened up and that you are now protecting your windows from being blown out in the system. So those are some of the measures persons should have in place in preparation for this.
So which is more serious, the watch or the warning?
Well, the watch means that there is a possibility that within about 48 hours we will experience a hurricane. In the warning, it means that within 36 hours you will start experiencing hurricane conditions.
Yes.
So once we give a hurricane warning, it means that the island will be impacted by hurricane conditions.
How do you alert us? How does ODPEM alert us?
Well, we take our cue from the Met Office, which leads in that process, and the alert process is a lot of it is media, in terms of your old school media. People talk about new media,
yes,
social
yes.
media, but the radio stations form a important part in giving the warning coming out of the Met Service and from the ODPEM.
And there's a particular signal that you have that you use to alert us?
Well, there's a national warning tone where once the country will hear that tone, then you know that the country will be undergoing an emergency condition. That's something we are really, it exists.
Yes.
It has been used many times, and we are working to ensure there's a rebranding of the tone for it to be more, I won't say a little bit more frightening, but person will pay greater attention to it when it is used.
All right, tell us about the shelters now. So you have shelters in all the parishes.
So there are shelters in all the parishes, and I would have said before that the local authority would have been key to the shelter inspection and ensuring that there's a shelter listing.
Yes.
And that is managed.
Where can we find the list?
The list can be, you can go onto the ODPEM website.
Tell us about that.
www.odpem.org.jm. It is on the Ministry of Local Government website, and it's also on all the local authorities' website, all the parish councils. And on that as well, you will get the name of your parish disaster coordinator, person that you will normally call if there's anything major happening in the parish. So there's extensive work that's been done. All the assessment has been done, and we are now looking at as well updating our shelter managers. A lot of them have come out of the system. So that a lot of time that a lot of our shelter managers are females.
Yes.
Females tend to give a lot of work in communities as it relates to disaster risk reduction and many other processes in communities.
So they do a lot of work.
They do a lot of work,
Yes.
and they are integral to the process, which
Yes.
we are extremely happy for. We
Yes.
hope that more men will come on board.
Right, yeah. So
But-
you're recruiting now?
So we are the local authorities have gone through the process to update and bring on new persons on board to fill the gap for persons who would have left, and training has taken place, and we're still doing training. The
Okay.
situation this year amidst COVID is that you can't bring in a lot of persons at once into a shared training facility.
But you now have enough people.
But we are doing the process in terms of from using the technology to do the training and bringing less persons at a time. So we would have covered in
Right.
terms of the shelter managers for the shelters.
Right, so we're experiencing a hurricane now. The hurricane is approaching. At what point do the people head for the shelters, and what do they do before they move into the
Well,
shelter?
as best as possible, if you're within a flood-prone area, you should really get into your shelter within 12 hours of impact.
Yes.
And we say to persons, get into your shelters as early as possible. You don't want to be trying to evacuate in the midst of the hurricane. Only if necessary, because you might have persons that they are not in a flood-prone
Yes,
area. They
okay.
don't live in a low-lying area, but it so happened that in the middle of the hurricane you lose your roof.
So
You
we have to
have
wrap
to do
now.
some kind of
Right,
evacuation.
we have to wrap
So
now. Just quickly tell us what's the difference between a hurricane and a storm.
the wind speed.
Which is more dangerous?
Both can be
Yes.
extremely dangerous. Your tropical storm would range from about 39 miles per hour up to about 74 miles per hour. At 73 miles per hour, anything above 74 miles per hour now becomes a hurricane.
Okay.
And then it goes through the grind from your Category 1 hurricane up to your Category 5 system, which is 156 miles per hour and greater.
Okay, your last word for Jamaicans as we close here.
Stay safe in light of COVID. Listen to the messages from the Ministry of Health, the ODPEM, the Ministry of Local Government, information coming out of the cabinet. In relation to hurricane, the same process. Listen to the Met Service, information from the ODPEM, and as best as possible, follow all the necessary messages that are given by the agents of the state to ensure that we are not only given the information, but we are protecting the public. So as best as possible, once the public listen to the advisory coming from the government and from the agent of the state, we will ensure that all the other protocols are in place to ensure that the country is safe.
Thank you so very much, Mr. Thompson, for coming today to share that useful information with us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me and for using your platform to get the message out there.
This has been Get the Facts. Our guest was Richard Thompson, Acting Director General at the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM. Now, this year's Atlantic hurricane season predicts a 60% chance of an above normal season and only 10% chance of a below normal one. Coupled with those projections is the COVID-19 pandemic, which could very well impact the preparedness and response activities for the season. Now more than ever, it is essential to consider adapting evacuation plans and prepare well in advance. Get your first aid kits, batteries, flashlight, and non-perishable items. Until next time, when Get the Facts brings you another informative program, I'm Enthros Campbell. Thanks for watching and take good care. Be safe.
We continue the conversation on hurricane preparedness, and I have an important question for you. What's in your survival or emergency kit? If that question caught you off guard, not to worry, we're here to help. These are essential items you will need to better prepare for the hurricane season. The first is water. ODPEM suggests storing 1 gallon for each person per day in plastic containers. Your emergency kit should also include at least a 7-day supply of non-perishable food. That means foods that require no refrigeration, no preparation of cooking, and little or no water. A well-stocked first aid kit is also recommended. Some things to include in it are adhesive bandages in all sizes, sterile gauze pads, a small pair of scissors, alcohol, cotton, and a supply of prescription medication and non-prescription medication such as over-the-counter painkillers. Some tools and supplies may include a battery-operated radio with extra batteries, candles, lanterns and flashlights, a can opener, utility knife, plastic sheeting and cash. Toilet paper, soap, feminine items, plastic garbage bags, disinfectant and household bleach are some sanitation supplies to have in the kit. And last but not least, clothing and bedding. We have no control over whether the island is impacted by a hurricane, but we can control our level of preparedness. The better we can prepare and the faster we can rebound from the effects of a natural disaster makes a big difference in Jamaica's continued push to be the place of choice to live, work, raise families, and do business.
Practice good hygiene by washing your hands frequently using soap and water. Here's how you should do it while conserving water. Turn on the tap to wet your hands, then turn off the pipe. Lather your hands and the tap with soap. Turn on the tap and wash your hands, back, front, and in between fingers. Use some of the water to wash off the tap, then turn it off. Dry your hands with disposable hand towels. If you don't have running water, use a hand rub containing 62% or more alcohol. If hand sanitizers are not available, rubbing alcohol, Dettol, white rum, or household bleach will do the trick. And if all else fails, let hand washing and the handling of potable water be a 2-person event. Each person will take turns pouring and washing hands with sitting water. Now is a good time to consider installing a tap on your containers to reduce the risk of water contamination. Faucets can be easily attached to drums, buckets, or 5-gallon water bottles. And to ensure that the outside of the containers are clean when recapping, disinfect it with hand rub containing alcohol that's 62% or more. The 5 R's of water conservation are also necessary to practice. Reduce water wastage by investing in water-saving devices. Reuse water at least twice before discarding. Replace leaking pipes, faucets, and other plumbing equipment. Recycle wastewater and use it for gardening, car washing, or cleaning of public spaces. And reclaim water through rainwater harvesting. We all must play our part to ensure there's water to combat the coronavirus and stave off prolonged drought.
We've been talking hurricane preparedness all show. Let's discuss something else that can also make our lives easier. See for yourself.
Compost is one of the richest form of soil nutrient. So here we are buying fertilizer for huge sums of money, when in fact we are throwing away something which is richer in many regards than what we are buying, spending hard cash for. We eat vegetables. We do ground provisions, the peelings from those. We use cardboards, newspapers, lots of stuff that can be broken down and can be put to good use.
Composting is a rich form of soil that is broken down by microorganisms to become either fertilizer or soil. Now we're going to do a demonstration to show you how we can do it. First, if we're starting, this is our kitchen waste. So if you're starting a compost bin at home, you need to get your kitchen peel, your banana, your lettuce, your cabbage, your tomatoes, and you cut them in finer particles. It will make it break down much faster. In order for the microorganism to work effectively, you need moisture, you need air, and you need heat. You can use a hand shovel or your hands. Too much moisture will allow the stuff to rot and it won't decompose. And if it is too dry, the microorganisms won't be able to work effectively. So you need to get a right mixture. If you squeeze it with a fist, you shouldn't have any water running out of it. If it's dripping, it is okay. If it is running out of it, that means you have too much water. So now this is our compost. If you keep this moisture in your compost, it will give you a maturity rate of 3.5 months. And you'll get this final product, which is this right here. Compost, what it does, the longer it stays into the ground, is the richer it becomes. We're going to demonstrate how we use our compost for potting. We're going to pot a few plants using our compost. This plant is called spider fern. It is an indoor plant that does like a fair amount of water. It likes a light mixture. The composting can be used for indoor and outdoor plants. This plant is called a bougainvillea. It is an outdoor plant. It likes a lot of sunlight. It blooms a lot, and it likes dry areas. The compost is offer drainage. It doesn't keep the water too long. This is now 6 weeks old, and this is 3 weeks after being planted.
It's about getting a behavioral change at source that will see significant reduction in solid waste. We want to see this reduction and to see it in a very tangible way. And we believe that composting provides that excellent opportunity.
This is about all the time we have for today. But you know the drill. Jamaica Magazine returns tomorrow. And if you can't wait, there's a lot more to see on our website and YouTube channel. Check them out and spare some time to connect with us on all the social media platforms. Until our next live link up, I'm Adrian Atkinson saying thanks for your company. Remember to ensure your survival or emergency kit is stocked. And if you didn't have one, there's no time like the present. See you next time.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service.